of ordinary Americans, but also opening the door to doing research to find out exactly what the benefits are. The third policy trajectory that I talk about in my book is the reality of the economic crisis, which challenges us to find new ways to manage our resources. And you can see that the public health and medical and economic trajectories are...
You get the picture? That's
the
picture that I want you to envision what he's saying. So he really has some really good points on it.
Yeah.
Did you also got
I'm just recording. I'm recording.
Public health. My bad. Well, I'm just going to
take still shots too.
Like real talk. Let's take a still shot. Right. Let's you got to on him.
All right.
Take a still shot of that one right there.
Really
about
reducing the public health problem associated with the drug war and with the criminalization of ordinary Americans, but also.
You got to hear what he's saying, because you can kind of hear the criminalization of ordinary Americans. You got to hear what he's saying.
The second is the growing recognition of the drug war itself as a public health problem. And I think that the California Medical Association's announcement really was more about reducing the public health problem associated with the drug war and with the criminalization of ordinary Americans, but also opening the door to doing more research to find out exactly what the medical benefits are. The third policy trajectory that I talk about in my book is the reality of the economic crisis, which challenges us to find new ways to manage our resources. And you can see that the public health and medical and economic trajectories are really intersecting in California, where producers of herbal cannabis products are beginning to measure and standardize those products and actually label them so that physicians who do those recommendations and physicians who treat patients who use herbal cannabis are better able to advise them about what type of herbal cannabis they would be able to use or should use for their particular condition.
The best arguments that I've heard against legalizing marijuana tend to draw from the same principles that would be used as an argument against alcohol or an argument against smoking, which is that a mood-altering substance, whether it's marijuana, alcohol, or nicotine, is inherently risky, opens risk to abuse, self-abuse, and other things. How do you reconcile the obvious mind-altering, the potential for abuse, whether it's with this or alcohol or anything else?
Well, first of all, there are numerous products on the market that have risks, and not the least of which are alcohol, which is mind-altering, and tobacco as well. So there are numerous products on the market that have risks. Obviously, regulations designed to minimize those risks. The alcohol prohibition, alcohol was far more dangerous than it is today, although admittedly it's dangerous enough as it is today. The problem with those arguments that try to support marijuana prohibition is that rarely do they look at the specific harms of herbal cannabis or marijuana in the context of the harms that you can attribute to other substances, whether it's tobacco and alcohol or whether it's the side effect profile of some of the medicines that are prescribed for serious conditions, and whether in some cases the side effect profile might be more preferable.
That the legalization of cannabis is a threat to the profitability of the private prison system, where I think 50% of those who are incarcerated are the war on terror, or the war on drugs, without having to disclose the flow of money because of the illegality of the structure, meaning of the drug.
He basically said, "Well, I the $46,000 to keep me in jail." That's what he said. How do you get that against the private practices?
There you go. There you go.
That's what he's asking.
Special interest side that.
I got it from there.
Hold on. Let me make sure you guys okay. Yes, question.
In some cases, the side effect profile might be more preferable with herbal cannabis.
And what of those that could be concerned on the special interest side that the legalization of cannabis is a threat to the profitability of the private prison system, where I think 50% of those who are incarcerated are on minor drug offenses. It is a threat to the ability of the government to fund the war on terror, or the war on drugs, without having to disclose the flow of money because of the illegality of the structure, meaning of the drug itself, that it authorizes basically undisclosed allocations of defense spending, and for that matter, that it could represent other threats to other entrenched interests, no different than reforming health care or, for that matter, banking.
Well, you mentioned a lot of powerful special interests, and you mentioned, a lot of major, large, global-scale questions, such as the war on drugs generally. In cannabinomics, my task is really more modest, is to point out that with herbal cannabis or marijuana, it's widely consumed, grown in all 50 states. It's been estimated by a couple of different studies as being a major cash crop in the United States. At least one study suggested it was more valuable than corn and wheat combined. And in California, another study has suggested that it's more valuable than the grapes crop, in connection with the wine industry. So clearly, there's a major cannabis industry in the United States, and the argument is to start with something where the side effect profile is relatively acceptable, where it's very hard to argue on a medical basis that herbal cannabis or marijuana is more dangerous than alcohol. Very hard to make that argument. And so the idea is that regulation offers the opportunity to improve the safety and reliability of access to specific products.
And what do you see as the path to that? In other words, if you say we're at the tipping point, how would you envision the transition and the end of prohibition from a technical standpoint?
Well, and let me just add in connection with what you said about the privatization of the prison industry. I mean, it seems very clear that the government officials will argue that very few people are doing a hard time for low-level marijuana arrests. Well, that may be true. Marijuana prohibition is playing a major role in the initial criminalization, the initiation into the criminal justice system for a very large number of ordinary American citizens. So clearly, marijuana prohibition is wreaking havoc at that level. I think the California Medical Association's announcement about its support for legalization, with the idea that it then could be studied, cannabis products that are now standardized and labeled and regulated to a certain degree, although not at the federal level, in California, could be studied, and we'd have a better idea of what the extent of its medical applications are. Interestingly, this happens at the same time as there is a product available produced in England and approved in several countries now. It's been approved in Canada since 2005 for multiple sclerosis. It's a liquid cannabis extract that's very highly standardized, and it's sprayed under the tongue. I think it's important that in California we're seeing a growing number of those kinds of products, and the path forward with programs such as California in continuing the regulatory process.
He's making, we talk about it, but he's making some really good principle arguments of why we should do it, and the communication of which y'all say.
It's been approved in Canada since 2005.